but I am scared.
It may not be safe for you to remain in Berlin.
We're not going anywhere, Elsa.
And I will not sit by and wait for fascists to kill my husband.
Dr. Einstein, you have a history of controversy, which calls into question your loyalties.
My loyalties?
The past, present, and future is but an illusion.
People say I am a genius, that it all came easily to me. The truth is, the only way to be a true artist is to work day and night. Lose yourself in it completely.
Those were scenes from the hugely celebrated National Geographic series Genius Einstein and Genius Picasso, respectively. My guest played a crucial role in lending both the authentic sartorial edge that won her 2 consecutive Primetime Emmy nominations in 2017 and 2018. Sonu Mishra has since been riding high, costume designing for major feature film and television projects around the world. Ever since this Mumbai native graduated from Sophia College with a degree in fashion design and moved to New York as a 19-year-old in 1989 to work in the wardrobe department at the Roundabout Theatre Company on Broadway and at Odds Costume Rentals, she has not looked back. Now living in Rome, Sonu is routinely offered prestigious costume design assignments. Having worked as a wardrobe supervisor for Martin Scorsese's The Gangs of New York early on, she has designed costumes for Apple TV's Shining Girls, AMC's fantasy miniseries Nosferatu, and several episodes of NBC's Crossing Lines, as well as Fox's Prison Break, apart from several movies. Sonu Mishra spoke to Mayank Shah Report from Rome about fashion and fabrics and things in between. After we last interacted, 2 Emmy nominations for 2 remarkable projects and 2 extraordinary individuals, Einstein and Picasso. How has your life changed since then?
I feel like after we did the 2 geniuses, I worked on the 2 geniuses, I felt like I was more open creatively because the first genius had never done anything like that before in my life, like that big and that extent, and shooting it back to back and going back and forth in time. So it kind of expanded the creative mind. Also, we have to be besides being creative, we had to also be very organized because we were shooting at different times, we were shooting different periods. So in somehow after that, then I felt like there was a big expansion in my capacity of doing my job. Like I wasn't afraid of anything. I wasn't afraid before that, but I got more excited after that because I feel like when you work with really amazing talent and it becomes like a teamwork, hair, makeup, wardrobe, the director of photography, our director, our showrunner. So it became this massive endeavor where we were all working hand in hand. So it was very exciting. After that, it just became even more exciting to do the work.
Tell me a bit about how you landed that Ron Howard, Brian Gazer project. It's like you said, it's a big, big project.
I was working on Prison Break in Vancouver in 2016. And somehow, I think it was a really great experience over there. And I think they were saying good things about me to Fox because it was produced by Fox. And so my name, and then they were coming to Europe. And so I got interviewed by our showrunner, Ken Biller, who, I had an interview on Skype and it went well and they hired me. So it was literally, I think it was a bit lucky because I was at the right place at the right time and the right people saw some talent in me, and that's how I got it.
As I pointed out in my email, you have dressed up 2 absolutely diverse geniuses, one of whom is not particularly known for fashion style at all. In fact, it was often slovenly, namely Albert Einstein.
Yes.
And then you had Pablo Picasso. Although these are the screen avatars, I'm fascinated by what it meant to have dressed up these 2 extraordinary characters. Talk a bit about that.
Okay, so I think basically on any film or TV show, the first thing is to find out who the person is and to go behind the psychology of the person and then see who our actor is and somehow see where that connection happens because each actor is different. And Jeffrey played Einstein in such a he's very much a method actor. They both felt their clothing on their bodies. Like when I would do my fittings, you could see that they needed to see how they felt in their clothes, how they move in them, because you really have to find that character in the clothing. So it's very much like, and then of course both of these amazing artists and scientists, there was a lot of luckily a lot of documentation and archive photographs, and especially for Picasso there were many videos. So just trying to also, that is one thing, to find out who the real person was, looking at our actor, figuring out where that connection will happen so it becomes very smooth and natural. And at the same time, it was important to see the scripts, read the scripts. We had 10 of them. Each season had 10 scripts, and see the timeline. So even though each episode we were going back and forth, what I did was I started like when they were born and when they passed away, and then we marked all the milestones in their lives, and so there's a lot of like even the blueprint that happens. So the approach towards Jeffrey was also very specific. So there were, I had all my mood boards, I had all the timelines, and then finding the clothes in this right eras, the right making them, finding the textures. Like for example, when he starts out, he's younger, so he's more fitted, more the clothes look are more fitted, and we had the younger Einstein who was Johnny Flynn, who's amazing. And then as he grew older, I ended up like making like padded bellies, because we have to also transform the actor through silhouettes visually. So that was Jeffrey, and it was very very meticulous, very very like we needed to get exactly how he felt psychologically in those moments of and how life was in the historical moment itself. While Picasso was very different, because he was the very self-confident and almost like a matador, and this very bigger than life. And Antonio is he's very precise and very much into acting, but he's fun, and he is and also I think the show was a lot more joyous and artistic. So Antonio was for example, in the morning, Jeffrey, he knew all his lines. He'd be very, very prepared, while Antonio could also be dancing and listening to music. So it was a different approach. So I'm sure if Antonio had to play a strong, a character who needed to be introverted, sure the energy would have been different in the morning on set. I'm not, can't promise. But so there were the two different energies, of who we were trying to portray and the actors who embodied those energies.
A thing that strikes me is Einstein was a very interior
Yes.
life, very inward focused, very almost reflexive. In contrast, you had this flamboyant matador in Picasso, who was completely externalized, almost in your face, unapologetic about who he was. I don't want to overanalyze it, but do you think that kind of personality contrast would have played any role in the way they dressed up themselves?
You know what? I'm not sure, but what I can tell you is that my first fitting with Antonio, if I've understood your question,
Yeah,
is
sure.
whether costumes played a role in them finding their character. So my first fitting with Antonio was in September in Paris. It was very hot, and I had all these really big, heavy woolen clothes, and the choice of fabrics and the way we actually cut the suits and all was very specific to make Antonio look shorter, because Picasso was not a very tall man, and Antonio is taller than him. So we had to bring everything down and, like just ground him more and make him a look, because he's quite lean and he's very, he's very, very, he's in good shape. He looks great. So we had to make him feel stronger and more like a matador. So I wasn't sure, here comes Antonio Banderas. We're doing our first fitting. We're in Paris. We're all sweating. And I'm like, oh my God, what if he won't take to wool and all the fabrics I've chosen? It would get cooler later. But he came in, he was lovely. And then we did the fitting and he tried on his clothes. And he stood up straight, he put his hands in the pocket, and he looked around. And I'll never forget that moment. I think I've said it a few times. He just looked in and he looked at me and he says, he said, "You got it. I think I feel Picasso in my clothing." And
How
both
wonderful.
the actors, no, it was amazing. And Jeffrey, the same thing. We were trying those quotes on where he would walk in the middle of the street when they were like, the kids were handing out the Nazi flyers. And, and Ron Howard said to me he wanted something that would have a little flow, like when he walked, you could feel the flow. And same thing, we tried on different quotes. And then the one that worked, I saw Jeffrey just change. And then when, everyone just agreed that was it. So I think an actor needs to feel their clothes on their bodies, because if they don't feel right in it, it actually can hamper their performance, I believe.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I was going to ask you about this. There are some actors who, in fact, say that unless they wear those particular clothes, they find it difficult to get into the character they are playing. And in these two cases, although they are both great actors, Einstein and Picasso, they are such larger than life personalities. I'm sure your costumes would have helped them sort of an entry point into their lives.
Definitely costumes and hair and makeup, because I always say hair, makeup, wardrobe, and photography, besides obviously the direction and, the actor's talent. But I feel like hair, makeup, wardrobe, and photography, because even our DP is amazing. So, the way the lighting, the way they light the camera and all, it changes. So it's such a collaboration what we do. But you're absolutely right. I think wardrobe and hair and makeup, the actor has to embody, that character through your work. So that's why I love it, Mayank. It's so beautiful to, just be in the room when you're trying to figure out what this character is going to be like and how it'll play out. And then to see the response from the actor, then from the director and, the crew members, it's kind of cool.
Interestingly, this is off a tangent. For someone like you who's dressing people, actors' guards are necessarily down when you
Yes.
do that.
Yes.
So you get to see sides of people that a lot of people don't get to see.
Yes.
In a sense, they have stripped themselves, right?
Truly.
Metaphorically.
Truly.
I don't know if you have any experience that you might want to share with either Jeffrey Rush or Antonio Banderas, because they're both very different people.
So both of them, I mean, so Jeffrey, I just love Jeffrey because he was always so precise and he knew all his lines. He knew all the scenes, he knew all the pages, he knew everything. It was mind boggling, because someone like him who was able to remember 10 scripts and all his, scenes, it was mind boggling. I've never seen anything like that. But he was also very courteous, always respectful, and also funny, and also, amazing. But of course, he had to be in character, and there were quite long scenes, and all these dialogues and pretty intense scenes. But I was always, quite impressed by the way he was ready for any scene. He knew all the lines. He was ready for that. While Antonio also, he knew what he had to do. He knew all his scenes, but he could be playful. One morning I went to the set. It was like 6 a.m. and we were supposed to go to, set in an hour. And I walked in to just see what the tie was or some, detail. And he had his music on. So we ended up we did a little Spanish dance in the morning.
Oh.
So it was really, I'm like, okay, this could be a nice way to start my day. And we had many, many different fittings, and each fittings, because as episodes would progress, we would have the actors come back to fit for the different. It was always interesting because, besides the work, there's always an exchange of, stories and histories. And both Jeffrey Rush and Antonio Banderas, they're amazing human beings, just great, great talents, but also really great people to be around, like very respectful. Also, they know who their roles are, they know what they're doing, but at the same time, they are great professionals and amazing talent. So every day was incredible. We didn't know what could happen.
Just last bit about this particular theme. Since you're talking about a period, say, the ending 19th century and beginning and middle 20th century, I'm interested to know how you zeroed in on the choice of fabrics.
Okay, so when it comes to fabrics, I always try to use what would be, authentic. So, I really love natural fabrics, and I feel like natural fabrics, I don't like any blends in, especially if it's a historical piece, You can tell on camera that there is some, synthetic fabric in the blends, and the way it moves on camera, it's
Yeah.
completely different. So, in general, I don't like to use. Unless it's like a 1970s and polyesters, like we had some scenes, so that's when it
Yeah.
makes sense to have it. But in general, I'd like to use like really good fabrics, also out of respect for my work and for the actor, because the actor has to, or the actress has to be in their clothes for for the duration of hours, for months. So even when they touch something and it feels good, that automatically helps one step forward, and then everything translates on screen. Like I feel like whatever choices we make will translate on screen. So I do, like, over there it was all like we looked for all kinds of natural fabrics, with wools and silks and cottons and linens. So depending on what atmosphere we were trying to create, we would go in, and I had shoppers who would go out and buy textiles, and so
Right.
yeah.
Right. Your recent work includes works like Apple TV's Shining Girls or
Yes.
AMC's NOS
Yes.
482 and Prison Break, Crossing Lines. Now, these are very divergent moods.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know how you would work on, say, something like NOS 482 compared to Prison Break. Now, Prison Break having wardrobe is a bit, it's hard to believe, but I'm sure there is pretty intense designing involved there.
There is actually, when it's simple, you really have to rack your brains, because in Prison Break, for example, Michael has only one set of costumes for almost whatever, like most of the series, because he runs away from a prison. So
Yeah.
basically, there, and again, we have to Prison Break. We actually was very complicated. You will not believe it, because we had Yemen in the season
Right.
5, and we were shooting in Vancouver, and we were going to shoot in Morocco. And I went to Vancouver, and I actually, we tried to figure out all the contemporary clothing. In the meanwhile, trying to figure out Yemen, I felt that the only way we could make that authentic and believable was make all the clothes in Morocco. So I went to my producer, Steve Beers, and I said to him, I said, it's going to cost us less to go to Morocco, because we had a base, we're going to shoot there. I said, I can send someone there, and we can make the clothes there, Yemeni clothing, because we need to make it look authentic. So we had a bit of a discussion about it. We figured, came up with numbers and whatnot. So my assistant, Martina, she went to Morocco. We set up a team, and we ended up making all the garments there, and they looked so great, because we had to shoot Yemen in Vancouver. And day one, when we were shooting, it felt real, it felt authentic, because it was. And then we also had video tutorials, because all the dresses were Canadian. They had never done headscarves or any of that. So we actually, from Morocco, the team had sent us video tutorials, and everyone actually did the tutorial in Vancouver, because we wanted it to look real. And in the meanwhile, for the men's costume, because it's like all stunt driven, we need to have 20 of each costume, because there was dirt, there was mud, there was this, there was that. So we had all the different stages. So there was a lot of planning, and then also aesthetically trying to figure out what colors we want to use, because it was all dusty. And in fact, if you see any of the photographs, we used all mud tones and with some splashes of color.
Right.
So it was really intense and kind of fun. And we had to do back and forth between Vancouver, Morocco. Then we came back to Vancouver, so the clothes were being sent back and forth. So that was more like aesthetically, we needed to figure out what it would look like, and then the organizing it of all of
Right.
it. While Nosferatu, NOS 482, that's written by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. And it's amazing, because it's a bit of a fantasy sci-fi, and it's from these graphic novels. So it was really cool, because we had to create these. I had to create these costumes for Zach Quinto, who's amazing, who played Manx, and then the rest of the world around them. And then we had this Christmas Land, it was called, where it's Christmas forever. And we came up like there was no timeline, so I ended up like getting research from like 1901 and all the hello, like really spooky clothing. And we created some amazing costumes in house. I had a very big department, so we were making masks and we were making clothing and we were like coming up with these amazing costumes. And our makeup hair designer is he did Johnny Depp's big, most of his styling, and he actually did all these amazing teeth. So we had to like for the little kids, because they're supposed to be young vampires, little vampires who Manx really steals their bodies and brings them to this Christmas land. And costume wise, it was so much fun because we created everything in house. Like we made all of Charlie Manx's clothing, we made the Millie Manx's clothing, we made all the Christmas land children. So even there, the set designer and I worked very closely in colors. How do we do it? So it was kind of great fun. And Carrie Skoglund, who was the director, and Jamie O'Brien, they're amazing women. So a lot of brainstorming, lots of trying to figure out, what we need and
But
creating.
Nosferatu being what it is, were there specific references to the way the clothing was, or it was left to entirely to your imagination?
For Charlie Manx's clothing, we were inspired by the graphic novel, but then what I
Okay.
did was I ended up like taking it and modifying it. We actually ended up like building the costume. We took authentic references of the chauffeur's uniform from 1934, but what I did was with my head tailor, we ended up like making mock-ups on the mannequin and changing the shape. So it kind of reminds you of the past, but at the same time, everything was modified to create its own lines, let's say.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact that you come from India and the fact that India is the hub of fabrics, do you think one has a natural feel for fabrics by the simple fact that you come from India?
100%. Fabrics and colors. And
Right.
my father was a film producer in India back in
I
the
see.
day. He only did like 2 or 3 movies, and
I
then
see. I didn't know that. Interesting.
yeah, and he did Dharti Ka Hai Pukar Ke in
Oh,
1969.
I see. Lovely songs.
Yeah, yes. And so I kind of like remember being a kid and going, and he was Dharmender's best friend, and they did he was his talent manager also. Then he had like later on there were some complications, but anyway, that's life. But so I grew up, and I think seeing my father and Dharmender travel around the world. Back in the day, they would go to Malta and wherever and do movies.
Yes.
I would look at them. I'm like, oh my God, I think I can live my life like that. So yes, for sure. He used to have a storage room, big. It was called the go down. You used to go down, and you're not supposed to go down. But I used to sneak in with my friends in the afternoons, and we would go and look at all the reels and clothes. So for sure, I'm very very much influenced by Bollywood and my childhood.
What's your preferred fabric left to you? Is there something that you would use repeatedly, or that's not how it works?
Do you know what I mean? That's a very good question. I think it depends on what intention, who we are dressing, what costume we're trying to create. But my favorite fabrics are for sure for myself and for film. I love good cottons, organic cottons,
Yeah.
because there's something about that cotton. And of course, if you're doing it's winter, then cashmere wools, because cashmere again, if you can have that option. It's so soft on the body. And I love silks, so these are my 3 favorites, and linen. Actually, when I can go on like flax.
I'm glad you are not mentioning polyester. in the 70s, one grew up because that used to be, and it became a sort of a pretty popular fabric. It was
Yes.
horrible. And I grew up in Ahmedabad. In
Oh, did you?
Ahmedabad's heat,
Yes.
to wear polyester was torture, but people did.
Yes.
And the shirts would actually stand when you took them out. So I'm glad you are not mentioning polyester, but apparently I think I'm digressing once again. I think part of the reason why it became popular was the cost thing. They were very cheap and lots of people could afford it without washing them much. So I
Truly.
suppose that was the. As I wrote in that email, fabrics really haven't undergone a major change for close to now 100,000 years since they were first used. I mean, there is some change, but by and large, they remain the same.
Yes.
do you think there is any possibility that as we move towards a more modern life, fabrics would change fundamentally?
Do you know, that's a really good question. In fact, I was so appreciative of you asking that question because actually, one of the things we have to be more mindful of, and I think everyone is doing, is sustainability,
Right.
because I think that way, and I know there's one thing that I've never used so far, it's the 3D fabric, and so that I've never used. There was a chance a little while ago for a project where it could have been used, but it didn't. There were a bit of hiccups that happened with it. But I feel like the biggest thing that comes to me is like, I think the way we could change it is to be more mindful about what kind of fabrics we are making, and to really pay attention to, like, whether it's sustainable, whether it's locally bought, and then for something more advanced, I think something that's different from what we already have. I'm really curious about this whole 3D method. I don't
Right.
know much about it, but I'm curious about it.
Yeah. Looking at your work, it's obvious, it's pretty clear that you have almost studiedly chosen not to work in India. Is
No,
that a conscious? Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, is it a fair thing to ask, or it's just one of those things that has happened?
That just happened, I think, Mayank, because I feel like if I could I mean, I would be happy to work in India. It's just that the way life takes you, it might happen. You never know.
Yeah.
So
But recently, I mean, there was a release of Karan Johar's film, the Rocky and Rani Ki whatever Prem Kahani, something. The reason I'm mentioning it is because I'm personally, I've never watched a single Karan Johar movie, and I'm not saying it I'm just saying it as a statement of fact. But I read that these costumes in that where they've really taken a life of their own. I don't know if you have seen the works there, because a lot has happened apparently in that.
oh, yeah, I should write it down. I'll watch it. Karan Johar. Okay.
Yeah,
I,
I think Rocky and Rani Ki some Prem Kahani.
okay, Rocky and Rani. I'll write it down. I'd love to see it.
It's one of those resplendent, glorious in this movie. But
Yeah.
the costumes are really, I mean, I saw it, they are stunning.
Wow.
Maybe you should check them out.
For sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would love to work in India. If the opportunity arises and something works out, it'd be fun. It'd be great fun to do it.
I'm surprised people haven't reached out to you, because you have an international profile. One would assume that, given the OTT and other works, how come?
I don't know. I don't know. It hasn't happened so far. Nothing. I don't know. Maybe because it's just like the way life takes you in a different direction. I think
Yeah.
it's just like my flow has been towards the West. Who
Right.
knows? I might go.
Yeah.
I do go back to India, but it's mostly to see my family, and my family lives in Bombay, so I go back there. Who knows? Anything is possible after you mentioned it. Who knows?
Indeed, indeed. Who, according to you, are the best clothes horses, both among male and female actors?
See, that was another great question. And for female, I always think of Kate Blanchett, because she has this amazing way of wearing her clothes, which, they're extremely stylish, but she makes them look easy and are completely at ease in her clothes. She can be stylish, but approachable, which is, I think, the main thing to be. You don't want to be so distanced that from the person, when you become so aloof. In fact, she wears her clothes and she wears these beautiful clothes, and she's very approachable, it seems. And for men, I think, of course, Ryan Gosling is known for his style, and I know from the young ones, it's what's his name? Sorry, I'm so sorry, I just had a flash. Then, of course, I love Jamie Foxx and Danny Glover. I was trying to think of.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Again, I bring you back to Mumbai.
Yeah.
Perhaps the best clothes horse in Mumbai of all time, to me, is Jackie Shroff.
Absolutely. I still love his movies. I love Jackie Shroff.
He can carry off. It's astonishing what he can carry off. I mean, in fact, I would go to the extent saying that I don't know of too many male stars internationally who could drop the clothes the way he does.
Yes.
Even that little boat cap that Maharashtrians wear.
Yes.
When Jackie Shroff wears it, it becomes, I mean, it has swag.
100%.
Yeah.
And you know who I used to love was back in the day in the 70s, because all my movies I've remained in the 70s. Parveen Babi was so beautiful.
Oh, she was. Yeah.
The other one, with a
Even
Z.
Zeenat Aman. Even Zeenat Aman.
Zinat
Yeah.
Aman.
Yeah.
Zinat Aman was like really amazing. But Parveen Babi, Zinat Aman, they were like so international back in the day. Even Rekha in her own way, like she's
Right.
gorgeous. But for me, Parveen Babi and Zinat Aman were like the just goddesses, you know.
Yeah. Uh, what is your idea of an impeccably dressed man?
Do you know what? I thought about that too. You asked some really amazing questions. I feel like when we embody who we are and we find ways to represent who our souls need to be at that moment, because we change through the years. And when we are dressed in a way that I really believe when we feel good in our clothes, we look good, that's my thing. So if I see a man and he looks amazing in a suit and he's got that, there even suits can be completely hipster, or they can be like very Milan, or they can be, this, or you have like someone in jeans and t-shirt but has that ease, or a woman who's just wearing a mini skirt or a long skirt or a dress. So whatever actually makes us feel good in our bodies and our skin, and it represents that moment. Like, it's obviously one dresses differently for a red carpet to go to have coffee. So I think there are so many
Yeah.
elements, so I feel like it's a bit of a mixture of everything.
Okay. Tell me a bit about new projects that you're working on now, something that you are really looking forward to.
So I was supposed to be in Canada working on The Abandons, but things for Netflix. But with the strike, everything is on hold, and I'm not sure what will happen next. I have a couple of uh, offers after the strike, so I just want to wait and see
I
and let
see.
you know.
Yeah, no, sure. In terms of the way you work, do you work as an independent company? Do you work as an independent professional? How does one contract you?
It's like project by project. So I'm with an agency in LA with APA,
Okay,
and it's a talent agency. So usually, we do our meetings and then we come up with our deal. So it's for the project based, basically.
I see. Do you have a very impressive proven record of having worked in so many projects? I would like you to talk a bit about how young women in India, I'm saying specifically young women in India, who may be interested in pursuing not necessarily abroad, but even within the country, costume designing as a career option. What kind of tips would you offer them?
I think we have to. Now, that's again a great question. I feel like it's very important to start studying. Besides studying, get work on sets, even if it means you're a PA or whatever. I think so. There are two aspects to costume design. The one is the creative one, and then the second one is how you actually have to get the job done.
Right.
So there are two. I'm just giving you a few ideas and just a general vision. There are people who are creative, who like to work in the tailoring room, who like to make costumes, who are part of like the creative process, who like to go shopping and all of that. So that's one side of the costume world. The second side is where it's more organized, where you have to be on set, you have to, be precise, you have to go be on time. You're on, you're the set person, and you're in charge of showing up every day, having the right costume, being on in front of the camera, making sure that the clothes are exactly the way the designer wants it to be. And then so there are two aspects to it. So first we need to figure out because I whenever someone comes to work with me, I'll always ask them, where do you feel better, working behind the scenes and creating costumes, which is, it's all chaotic and crazy, and then set is where it's very precise. You have to show up, you have to be there. So there are two kinds of mindsets that one has to figure out where you belong. And then, of course, before you answer that question, one has to have experience. So go and work with designers, go and work on sets, go and work in other teams as well, just to see how it works. Because the main thing is we don't realize how long the hours are, how stressful work can get, that how how much resilience we need. So one has to slowly and steadily find their tribe. So find designers, or if they want to be designers, if someone wants to work with a designer, work with different designers, see what style fits you, because some designers are very organized and very creative, and other designers go with the flow. So it depends what kind of person you are, so you have to make connections. Sorry, it's a bit of a
No,
long.
no, no, I understand. Imagine me as an 18-year-old girl in Yavatmal, for instance, with a small town. My perceptions are small, and yet I have international ambitions as a designer, costume designer. Give me 2, 3 tips, which are simple tips that a Yavatmal girl, 18 years old, will understand.
Okay, in that case, get a job on a set and
Okay.
take courses,
Okay.
study. So I say, and then
Right.
and watch movies.
Okay.
So these are the three.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you need the vision, you need the inspiration, visuals, seeing what. So watch films, see what you like. Visual, you need to know that. Get practical experience on set, because then you'll know that. And then study, go and take courses. So then
Okay.
you'll learn the tech, you'll learn the all the notions behind it. So all
Okay.
three.
Just last couple of things. One is what is the difference between designing for a feature film and designing for a series? And the reason I'm asking is the sheer duration. The time span is different on an OTT series. There's evolution is of a different kind in character. So tell
Very.
me, yeah.
So basically, for TV, it's for film. Let's start with film. Everything is bigger than life because it's all on the big screen. So the detail, it's very detail oriented, because you'll see the socks, you'll see the cuff, you'll see that, because on the big screen you have to pay attention to everything, every detail. And it depends. And also, like you said, it's so for a shorter duration. So all the energies go into making sure that the stripe on the shirt, you'll see everything on the big screen. So it's
Right.
very much oriented towards the details, the way the cuff is cut, the collar is cut, everything's very detailed. The earrings, you'll see everything. While in TV, you have to make an impact, you have to get the atmosphere, you have to get the what's happening in that scene, whether it's a sad moment, it's a happy moment, it's a moment of tension. So we work through silhouettes, colors, shapes. So I think, and then you have to work much faster. So you have to also be really quick at reading the script and understanding whether am I going to see Mayank only this much for the whole thing, or is he going to get up and walk out of the room? So, of course, you want to dress the actor from top to bottom in the best way, but also you focus more on what's going to be seen on camera. And I think I use silhouettes and colors to create that makes a big impact. For example, if it's raining and there's this tension, then we'll work with the background also, saying come in with darker colors, so you create that atmosphere. And instead, if you want to show this joyous moment, you will show it like with color and silhouette. While when on big screens, you have to be careful, like the last person in the back will be maybe seen properly, because just the way the camera works.
Any interesting recommendation for movies memorable for their costumes?
Oh my God, great. The Age of Innocence is one of my favorites,
Okay.
because that is an authentic portrayal of, and then Gangs of New York, of course, which I worked on with Sandy Powell. Um, but the Age of Innocence, I loved it because it's so beautifully shot, and Scorsese really took his time to show all the details. And there's this slow way of shooting it where you see clothes and hair and props. So I think if someone's studying film, they should watch that movie.